Welcome to the Social Media Church podcast. In this episode of the podcast, we are talking about real-time social media. And what we mean by real-time social media is while events are happening, while the church services are happening on the weekends, or while Wednesday night activities are happening, or youth camp, what should you be doing on social media in real time on your social media accounts? I'm joined by Aaron Magnuson. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nils, pleasure.
So we are talking real-time social media, so posting on, and you see this primarily on Instagram, that in Instagram stories that churches are doing this. There are social media agencies that are fully dedicated to this, that you can hire for events that will come in and do videos and photos and post in real time. And what you see at a lot of churches is people posting content. A lot of times the goal of that is to create FOMO, so that people that aren't there wish they were there. And so maybe we should start with, what's the purpose of real-time social media? Aaron, what would you say? Why should people be posting in real time?
Well, I think about how this plays out for me. Really, the only event that happens weekly that I care about, or sometimes multiple times a week, depending on what it is, but the teams that I follow in sports. And the advantage to it is when I'm not actually watching the game. And actually, let me say it this way. Even when I am watching the game, I still tune into Twitter because I want to know who isn't in my room that I want to hear the commentary of based on what's happening. And so to me, it's not even just the strategy of creating, man, I bet you wish you were here. It's some people, they do wish they were here, and they would have been there if it wasn't X, Y, or Z, right? If they didn't have something else going on. And so what you're doing is you're giving people a glimpse into what they know they're missing, and you're almost just reassuring them that they're still a part. I think for other people, particularly in our church context, you're painting a really accurate picture of the event that you want people to check out. And so I think regardless of what it is, the advantage to real-time posting is you're painting an accurate picture, as accurate as you possibly can, of what it is that's going on. And then maybe some people wish they would have been there. Maybe other people knew that they had something else going on, and so then they were able to still feel a part. And for other people, they have no idea at all, and you've just given them an idea. Yes. And so I think by posting those things, you're doing all of those things. Like, you don't have to post differently for those different audiences. Posting an accurate whatever it is, something about your event is going to do that for all three of those audiences.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great functions. I think you bringing up sports is a great thought, because I think in the church, you and I are behind the scenes. We feel like we know and see everything, but there's a lot of people that don't. And so I think, I'm a Houston Texans fan. I love game day. I love seeing what the players walk in wearing to the tunnel. I'm looking for that on Instagram on game day before the game. I'm looking for, warm-ups and what maybe people are saying. There's, the Facebook, there's announcers on the Houston Texans Facebook page that always do a pregame and about an hour before the game of what's happening, who's hurt, what's prepping for the game. While the game is going on, you see updates and highlights that of certain plays that go on social media. And so I think sports is actually a really good example of why it's important, because people want to know a little bit behind the scenes. They want to know what to expect as they're preparing for the game. They want to know, like, oh, that was a highlight from the game. I want to see that again and remind me of that play that happened. And then even the post-game interview of when it's happening. And then you want a recap of like the highlight from that. And then all the next week, you're getting clips recapping the game, the best plays, the best stories, and then you're getting updates of the next game. And so that's what happens essentially in the church world is you've got Sundays and you've got Wednesday. You likely have multiple things happening, but the weekends are likely the most significant event in the life of your church. And so how you capture that, I think one of the unique challenges that churches feel is, how do you keep from it being the exact same thing every Sunday? And so it can feel like, okay, there's people walking in, there's people on the stage singing, there's people in the crowd, there's a person preaching, and then there's people leaving. Like it can feel like you're watching the exact same thing over and over again. I'm curious, and maybe Aaron, what we should talk about is, what are the things that people that churches should capture to engage throughout that experience, to really capture on social media real time? And then what do they do on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, to effectively kind of engage on each platform, or should they be engaging on each platform? So let's maybe start with, what do they need to capture?
That's good. What do they need to capture? I do think there's a certain level of repetitiveness that you fear, that I even fear posting daily, where it's like, man, I really like, because it exposes the fact that you're just not as exciting as you could make yourself seem to be.
Yeah.
On Instagram. But I would say that consistency is actually, I would spin it and I would say that's important, for the same reason that it's important when each of us is a part of churches where you have the announcements and they're almost exactly the same every single week. And that's okay, because those particular posts and those particular announcements aren't for the regulars. They're for the people who are just checking out. So I don't think it's bad to have certain elements that are the same every single week, because consistency is good. It's showing that you didn't have one good week where 1,000 people showed up, or one good week where you filled the cafeteria, but you had week after week after week, it is feeling this way. Now, the advantages to stories, because I'm thinking in videos, and predominantly Nils and I both agree, Instagram is primarily where you should be focused with these things, and stories is the best way to live do that. And so, or to live post on Instagram, I should say. And so I would say the best way to make it not stale and the same every week, so you do have those elements that are the same every single week, is to involve people. And whether that's, and I wouldn't even say random people, I would say involve the players. Like when I'm thinking about sports, to carry out this sports metaphor, what Nils enjoys is seeing what are the players wearing, what are, and granted, I think that the advantage we have in churches, we can take it a step further, where Nils doesn't necessarily get to hear from the players. Granted, they might be posting some stuff on their own social medias where Nils does get to see that stuff. But as far as on the team page, the advantage that we have is we can actually do little spots with these characters. And so, and you're never going to get the same answer each week when you're doing that, right? Because people are, and ultimately it's people that you're going to connect with. And so you have the advantage to interview, ask questions, to do little spots, behind the scenes stuff, give people access to the people who are leading them through a service. And we don't necessarily, well, me personally, I don't advise creating some sort of a pedestal for them, but these are the people that we are going to be interacting with and who are leading us through a service. And so to do that on a more personal level, and to do that in a more intimate way, ultimately connecting them with Jesus, which is our goal, exposing them as people and giving them access to giving them access at scale is how I like to talk about it. Is a great way to do that. And so those are some fresh content, because that's going to be different every week, because it might be different people, but you're certainly going, even if it's the same people, you're certainly going to get different answers out of them each week. And then you can also have stuff that is consistent. It might seem boring to you, but for the first time viewer, it's really good for them to get an accurate picture of what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. I think it's a good point too, that it can look the same, because I think even the sports, it's the same thing. Totally. Players walking in, it's the players playing the game, it's the players leaving, and talking about the game. And the game might be different, in your sermon it's going to be different, your worship's going to be different, but a lot of the things are going to feel the same and look the same. And so I think your weekend experience, there's going to be similar things that will be consistent. And in some ways, that consistency people are looking forward to is what's unique there. I would, though, highlight behind the scenes. I think people really like seeing behind the scenes. And I think even doing like a pregame where the pastor and maybe even the worship pastor are doing something. And I think about maybe even the kids pastor of, we've got the kids area already, can't wait for the kids to be here this Sunday. We're going to do something really exciting, or the student pastor, whatever it might be, that there's excitement that builds, that everybody's ready. We're ready. The parking lot's ready. We've got people in carts ready. We're ready for you. And so creating that excitement, I think creating the excitement of, okay, it's happening, like this is happening right now. And this is exciting. And a lot of that is, if you have multiple services, is like, look, we're going to be doing this again in 2 hours. So you want to make sure you don't
Totally.
miss this. And then I would say too, capturing some of the key points of the sermon. So maybe it's a slide
Yes.
and you snap that and you put it up there. And then even, I would say the other thing that's valuable to get is people's faces. I think
Yeah,
people always like to get faces.
definitely.
You've got to be careful with that. Make sure you have the rights and
For
approval to
sure.
post that, especially when you're talking about kids. But
Yes,
nothing engages better on social media than people's faces. And so
totally.
capturing people's faces, showing your congregation and real people that look like people that aren't there, that could feels like,
Exactly.
I could be there. They look like normal people at church. And so, and they're wearing clothes that I can, I know what to wear now when I go to church.
Yes,
So capturing those things go a long way. And I think what you need to not be afraid of is posting too much,
totally.
especially when it comes to Instagram stories. So I think real time of Instagram posts, maybe one or two Instagram stories, I think feel good doing 10 to 20.
Yeah,
And then when we're talking about Twitter, I would really keep it primarily to text-based post. So
totally.
this could be, here's our sermon set and here's our
Oh,
worship
that's
set. I
good.
mean, here's our sermon, key points or a couple quotes, and really kind of highlighting, connecting those pieces. And then on Facebook, I think I could see even doing a Facebook Live the morning of with the pastor and maybe worship pastor of an invitation, and we're here, we're getting ready, and doing like a minute and a half, 2 minute long Facebook Live, kind of like a pregame. But yeah, I mean, I think don't overdo it on Facebook either. I think Instagram stories is the place to really dig into that real time social media. And then have fun, try different things, see what sticks, see what engages. Aaron, as you know, I have been on a transformation church kick. I love what they're doing on social media. And they actually, one of the things I think that's important to note, and a lot of pastors, and it's a healthy tension to navigate, a lot of pastors are just, they're like, I don't think people care what I eat for breakfast. I don't understand why I need to post on social media. We'll just let the church post. The reality is people connect to people more than they connect to an organization.
Yes,
And while your church is an organization of people, every organization is essentially an organization of people. But it's still an organization. It has a name of the collective of people, and people collect to a person more than a collective. And so people naturally are probably going to, your pastor is probably going to have more followers than your church, because people, or they're going to be more engaged to your pastor because he's a person or she's a person.
yes,
And so Mike Todd is the pastor of Transformation Church. Transformation does a great job of real-time social media, both on his account and on the church account. But one of the things that I met somebody the other day who was talking about transformation. They're like, I love when Pastor Mike pulls up to the church every Sunday,
yes,
and I see him getting out of the car and being greeted and walking in and then sitting down in his chair to get ready. And that's part of their excitement of that's part of me getting ready for church, is feeling his energy as he's walking in to prepare for church. And so I think that's a great example of
yes,
how to pregame your church. And I think at the end of the day, for pastors to get more comfortable being on social media and
yes,
understanding the connection that people want, even if they can't, like my
exactly.
pastor, Carl Lentz, I've never met him personally. I've literally, we've gone to church at Hillsong for over 3 years. But I feel connected to him because social media, because of the
Yes,
sermon, and we know other pastors at the church, and other, we're connected. We're members of the church. We're leaders in our church. But we can do that without, and have a personal connection without physically being connected. I know that's a disconnect for a lot of people, but understanding that it helps you engage deeper
yes,
with your
yes,
congregation, with your community. So I just want to encourage pastors to be more comfortable with that, or encourage your pastor to engage both personally and on the organization. Aaron, I'm curious, as we wrap up this podcast, any other thoughts you have about real-time social media in the life of a church?
yeah. I do think it's important because you're giving people an accurate portrayal, or you want to give people an accurate portrayal, hitting those three audiences. Whether there's somebody that was like, is it worth it? You're reminding them that, yeah, it is worth it. And then the person who's maybe never seen anything from you before, you give them a really good taste of what it will be like when they show up there. And then for the people who just aren't able to be there, the last category, who want to be there, you're continuing to give them an experience of, oh man, it really felt like I was able to be there today. And I'm excited to next weekend.
Yes.
I know I had to miss this weekend, but I'm excited for next weekend. And so the advantage to doing it live is you really get to celebrate those cool moments, those moments that whether it's in a message and you know that it's coming, a really impactful moment for an audience. It doesn't just live in that moment, in that building, in that physical space, but it can live digitally in that moment as well. And you also, or it might be an element during worship, or a spontaneous element that you didn't know was going to happen, but absolutely did happen. Always being prepared to document because of its scalability. And so I think to echo what Nils was saying, as pastors and as leaders in a church, because it's not just the teaching pastors, but as leaders in the church, you have a unique aspect and view on the church, and you have unique positions that you get to be within the church, particularly on a weekend. I mean, I think about the places I get to go that other people don't get to go, not necessarily backstage, but just even in the booth, like clicking buttons on a computer for how we're going to send this out to the world. And other people want to see that, and you get to do that at scale when you post that on social media. You don't have to, you think about, when I'll post in my story on the weekend, I've just allowed 200 people to go into that room with me instead of literally taking 200 people. Hey, check this out, which I could do. I could walk anybody back there that I want to. But there's people who want to connect with you. And so as pastors and leaders in the church, because you have a perspective that people care about, always be thinking about how you can be ready to document, and then do that because you're creating pastoral leadership at scale for people who are in your church, and you're giving them a feeling of belonging that they wouldn't already have. And don't dismiss it, because it's very real. I mean, you listen to how Nils is talking about his senior pastor, and how other people talk about Pastor Mike. It's like they actually are more bought into the church. They didn't have a conversation. They didn't go into the DMs with Pastor Mike. They didn't even talk to him in the comment section. They just watched him doing something human, and they will connect to his messages better. All those points that you want to communicate on the weekend, teaching pastor that's listening to this, are going to be communicated better when there's a group of people that are actively engaged with you. And that doesn't just happen through conversation, but it actually happens through just humanizing yourself. And social media has never given us a better opportunity to humanize ourselves when we're prepared to document.
And I want to tell you this story, Aaron, of Robert Emmett was my senior pastor at Community Bible Church when I was there for so many years. And when he retired as being the pastor, he was asking me for some ideas of, I still want to do some ministry and be engaged. And this is when Facebook Live was kind of picking up. I said, just do this Facebook Live thing. Whenever you have a message God gave you that you want to share out, use Facebook Live. Just hit go live, because I thought this is going to be the easiest way for him to create content and get it out where he didn't have to record it and upload it and create a title. Think of a title, put that title in and pick go live, and then stop, and you're done. And so what he did is he called it trash talks. So anytime he was taking his trash out, he would, for a couple minutes, do a little trash talk.
That's awesome.
And what that did is people felt like they were part of his life. He was literally taking out the trash. You're part of his life, and he's having a conversation with you while doing a household chore. And so, Aaron, it's like you drinking a cup of coffee every day on TikTok.
Yep.
It created him a reminder of when he could minister to people. And then it also, people felt so personally connected to him. And when he was pastor, I struggled to get him to do social media. And then after after he was pastor, now he's got a whole ministry now of just being on. And I think one of the things that I hear so often from pastors is nobody cares what I ate for breakfast. And the reality is people care more than you think about what you ate for breakfast. You might not care what other people are eating for breakfast. And breakfast is an extreme people maybe don't care as much about what you ate for breakfast, but they care what sports team you like. Totally. They care about what do you play golf or what tennis or what they want to know you personally. And so when you can invite them to have through social media a personal connection with you, there's a lot of value in that. And I think real time personal connection is a big deal. And so think about real time personal connection on your personal accounts throughout the week. Think about it on your social media accounts throughout the week at your church. And then I think especially on the weekends of really inviting people to be a part of the whole experience, the practices, the warm up, the prayer that's going in beforehand, the wrap up, maybe the recap at the end of the Sunday of like, here's what God did this Sunday. We're blown away, or going home full, or going home, here's a story that we heard this weekend. So I think really thinking through, how can you capture the story? How can you really increase that engagement, and then create shareable opportunities where people can easily share that content with their friends and family, creating that excitement with the content you're creating in real time, that they can then invite people in real time to join them and be a part. So I think there's a ton of opportunities. I think it's something to prioritize and think about, and give somebody. This is where, Aaron, we've gone back to this before. Churches want to have control. They don't like letting go of control, and doing real-time social media is often like, well, you have to give to this person. They have to approve it, and then this person has to approve it. And, how are we going to have our approval process? Well, you know what? Real-time social media doesn't work that way. And you've got to empower somebody that you trust. Don't just give a 14-year-old a phone and account access and hope it goes well. You need to have somebody you trust and is responsible, but you cannot wait 2 weeks to post something on social media like you do with other things within your communication systems in your church. Real time is one of the most effective ways to engage people through your social media accounts. That's my thoughts. I would love to know what churches out there are doing real-time social media well. I want to highlight my personal church, Hillsong New York City. I think they do a great job. And I say they, as a congregant at Hillsong, I'll say we do a great job, although I'm not involved in our church's social media. I love engaging with it online, and I feel very connected to my church through social media. But I would love to know what other churches are doing real-time social media well, that we should be looking at and paying attention to and learning from. Use the hashtag SMC podcast on Twitter or Instagram to share your thoughts. What churches are doing real-time social media well. Thanks so much for listening. Leave a rating or a review wherever it is that you're listening, and make sure you go to our website, socialmedia.church, for all the show notes and to connect with us there on the site and listen to old episodes. We appreciate you listening to this episode of the podcast. Thanks.